jump right into our guest presentation tonight. We have Chris Copeland of Beverly Crossing and Thad Masco of SV Design. Miranda Gooding of Glovsky is also presenting tonight. So they're going to be talking about the Depot Square 2 development project, and then also touching on another planning study that's coming down the pipeline briefly that the W2CA will also be involved in. So, Chris, you want to start?
Thanks. Yeah, sure. Thank you for your time. I'm sure most are interested. This block has been sitting for a very long time.
Could you speak a little more loudly, please?
Yeah. Thank you for coming. We appreciate your time. We're talking about the Depot 2 block here. This has been a long time coming. We understand this block has been sitting for a long time. We understand various people have different visions about this block. It's very impactful. It's very local to everybody. It's very visible. A lot of people pass by, a lot of people in Ward, but obviously a lot of people in the city, a lot of people out of the city. Everybody sees it as very visible. We take that very seriously. We've studied this for years. We've looked at market trends, construction costs, rehab. We've looked at all the different scenarios for a very long time. We hope what we present tonight is something you can find as inspirational, that connects people, that brings retail vibrancy businesses to this area. We hope it complements. We've worked hard to have it complement Odell Park and the train station and the intermodal transportation initiative that the city has been awarded money to study. We think it connects to that. We're very aware of the sensitivities around this block and the prior developments that we've had. We operate 322 apartments in the city. We've been doing this as part of Steve Dodge's vision since about 2008-ish, 2010, somewhere in that range, with the start of Burnham Apartments, which is where the Kelly Infinity used to be. We've made significant investments in Beverly. We think, as a Main Streets member, as a member of the trustees for Montserrat College of Art, we have a very vested interest in this city, and I can't reiterate enough that we take this very seriously. So I think we'll get into the visuals, we'll break and talk about some Q&A, and we can talk about our permitting schedule and things related around it. But I think if we get into the visuals first, it'll formulate what we need to discuss for that. So I'll turn it over.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to stand so you can maybe hear me better. I think you all know where the building, where the lot block is that's bounded by Rantoul and Park Street, Railroad, and Pleasant Street, right adjacent to the park, right at the depot. And as you know, on Railroad Avenue, there's that double-loaded parking area here. You know, parking as you come up. Weaver Glass Building, the Sullivan Chiropractic, Casa de Luca, and the old press box. Mostly still there. And looking down Rantoul toward our site here on the left side is on the left. A little bit of close-up view of it. And looking at it further back down from Rantoul with the 131 building that was finished up recently on our right on that slide. And then again, looking down Railroad Avenue, where the new lights have been put in and the new Rantoul should redo. And from the depot, looking back at the old press box building with Park Street here and the 60 Pleasant Veterans Housing renovation there, and our 131 building showing itself on that corner there. And this is the vision for the building. It's a 6-story building. It has a major cornice line at the 4th floor. It employs a lot of brick. This is looking at it on Rantoul Street, driving north with the 131 building on the right and this building on the left. Ground floor retail, activated retail across the whole ground floor in Rantoul, and then turning the corner down where there's a plaza on the Railroad Avenue side. It's apartments on the 2nd floor up and partial on the 3rd floor, but the site drops down a full story as you go from Rantoul down to Park. So that it's those units on the back are upper floor, so those stay as residential units. This is a view, if you were hovering over the park, if you will, Veterans Park, to get a feel for what's happening with this courtyard. So Rantoul Street is here, Railroad Avenue. There's a way to get, this is level, a way for pedestrians to get onto this plaza up here, where there'd be outdoor dining and restaurant and retail space and so forth. The residential entrance is back in here, apartments again up top, a fair bit of brick, a 4-story cornice line that runs around the building, but tall building guidelines suggested a prominent corner on that corner, so we went for the full 6 stories on that corner. And changed up, you'll notice if subtly the windowing here is a little more traditional, relates to the 131 building. The windowing on this side, even though it's one building, got to be a little more mill-like, a little more like the Pleasant Street, a little more like the other mills that are down on that line. This is if you were walking onto the plaza. You have the public sidewalk goes down to the depot. I suspect folks go to the train routes to take the low road, if you will. But if you stay up on this high road, there's some public seating area, there's restaurant area, so forth. Again, more of an activated pedestrian idea with the units up above. A little further in. We have a video of this that will fly you around the project that I think will give you the full picture, but this just gives you a sense of the materials. And from the park, looking back in, from the farmer's market area, if you will, looking back toward the residential entrance is set further back. There's some private residential courtyard space there, and more public, if you will, almost semi-public space, and then finally the public realm is here. There's, we're talking about a memorial, memorializing the historic area, the historic railroad area that was here. Something about probably the Trafton and the other buildings, but also even maybe something even about Mr. Dodge and his impact on the area. Materials, pretty traditional brick, some metal, and some deep channel siding that gives you some texture to the building. So you'll see it's mostly brick. And that some of that channel siding is here, and some of the metal or the Nichiha panel, just kind of a metal-like looking panel in filling. So it's a large building. We're kind of seeing it as a building and a building with a connected kind of piece. It's not trying to be preciously historic, to be honest. But I wouldn't call it wildly modern. It's kind of transitional. We're trying to pick up some of the bits and pieces from both sides. So when we looked at it, back to that, we looked at 60 Pleasant, we looked at Depot 1. We call this Depot 2, by the way, but that's not its official name. It's our shorthand. It will be named something, probably not Depot 2. But we don't know what else to call it other than the building at the corner of Park Pleasant Railroad. It seems a little bit long. So this is Sarah's building, Sarah Barnett's building. We actually worked on cleaning up that building with Norman Lee. You can kind of see what's happening. But we looked at these buildings and their materiality, and then we looked at some of the mill buildings. Of course, our own work here at 131, which I think was pretty well received. And then we went a little bit afield. We looked at some buildings further apart where they had used brick and a little more modern material. Trying to see, was there some opportunity there? So there's this sort of industrial, modern, yet traditional kind of blending, I think, that we're going for. So floor plans, this has 2 levels of parking garage underneath it. There's only one entrance into the parking, that's from Park Street, which is one level below Rantoul because of the way the grade works. You would enter the building from Park Street through a single garage door. You can ramp down to a low-level garage, which is completely buried, or you can stay on the level and as you can see, a donut circulation. On Rantoul Street, you have no idea the garage is there. In fact, until you get to the backside, you never actually see the building kind of coming, really fully coming out of the ground. Parking spaces, I think there's 114 for 114 units. Retail parking is adjacent, is on the frontage, and in the MBTA garages is allowed. I think there's a couple extra spaces in the project. So this is floors one, the low level of the garage. The main level with Rantoul here, this is that plaza entrance I spoke of, the private entrance into the residential. 3 good-sized retail / restaurant spaces, and some units here as the grade drops down. The orange ones are 2 bedrooms, the blues are 1 bedrooms, and we've got some studios mixed in the mix on this project. There's a connection off of this terrace down to the street. There's also some covered area where you might have an outdoor dining spot that will get you out of the weather. And then going up to levels 2, 3, and 4 are identical, and level 5 has the step backs in, so you have a 4-story cornice, and then you pop up. And level 6 does that even further still. This happens to be 131, but they'll show some roof decks, some common lounge spaces where folks hang out would certainly be incorporated. Typical unit, has fairly high ceilings, has for months of good-sized windows, pretty nice views from most of all. So we're almost surprised, I might say, by some of the views we get as we get up. Even the Ford building now has really neat views down the river. And then we think hard about amenities. This happens to be a typical kind of bike room where folks within the parking garage have a place to keep bikes and encourage the use of bicycles. So with that, I'm going to run the video. Hopefully it will run. That's it. One thing I might not have mentioned, there's some public art opportunities on the plaza, this memorial area, and also down on Park Street. We're expecting that there's some panels that would help provide for some public art. Sure, I left some other things out.
If I could make a couple more statements. So the idea is to, in terms of timing, is to permit this year through the planning board and then start construction sometime next year as best we can anticipate at this point. As I said, this was part of Steve's vision. He died on January 17th. He was able to see most of this. He was a part of this process in producing what we see so far. He was pushing for historic elements or tying Beverly together, but also bringing it forward into the future with some of these elements, as Thad mentioned, that are a little bit more modern. But the idea of creating a place for people to gather, people to congregate was real important, that connection to the public and commuters, and having a really good retail presence, that was important to him, so he was able to see this. I wanted to say a couple more things, just to, in case, for context for some folks. So, all of our buildings right now are 100% full. 28% of our residents come from Beverly, and another 32% come from the North Shore. So it's virtually 2/3 of all of our residents in all of our buildings today come from Beverly and the North Shore. They live and work on the North Shore. It's not a mass of commuting people to Boston. We have something like 16% that work in Boston in our total portfolio that we have right now. A full 45% work in Beverly or the North Shore. We ask folks when they come where they work, and that's about all we can ask them. We can't ask them how they get to work or things like that, but for fair housing. But we do ask them that. One of the things with this project would be 10 units at 60% AMI affordability would be created off-site. That would put us at 106 units of affordable units created in the city that we've been a part of creating. So we do take that seriously. That is roughly 16% of all the units we've created through this one would be 16% of units created that are affordable, above the 12% that historically has been the ordinance. So I just wanted to set those things, because people may ask who's living in our buildings. We don't have retailers slated for here, but I can say retailers are paying attention to Beverly, our development over on the Ford site. There's been a number of interested, larger groups interested in operating retail there, including a co-working space, coffee, restaurants, bistros, those kinds of things that have all been interested there. So I think that trend will continue. We are seeing mostly younger folks demographics, 25 to 35-year-olds roughly. That's been the predominant demographic, but second to that is the retirees at 60, 59 plus. So that's most of the picture of who's in our building. So, did you want me to talk about the intermodal thing?
Yeah, would you rather get into questions on the building specifically, or just?
Yeah, we can open to that, it's okay.
Yeah, Charlie?
A couple of questions. As you probably know, I live immediately next door. This is my neighbor, going to be my neighbor. I had a couple of questions from our own experience. Your parking entrance on Park Street. I should just tell you that one of the issues we face, of course, our parking is off.
Yeah, of course.
Off Pleasant Street. One entrance is off
you have
Pleasant, one entrance is off Court. As one waits for the gate to go up, one has to stack, and that is a problem. That's a potential risk. So as you think about Park Street, people are going to be coming up Pleasant, and are going to be queuing to go into your building, and there's going to be the threat of the rear-end collision.
Got it.
So I don't quite know what you do. I don't know if you bump into the roadway or something, but I'm just telling you.
There might be some width there we can.
That is an issue that you do need to address. Now, I did speak with Tad, and, excuse me, that I've gotten the answers to some of these questions, but I think other people will have them too. You're looking at about 15 months of construction, something like that, once you start. Is that
Probably
right?
something like that, yeah.
So we're looking probably about a year from now,
Yeah.
away you go.
Something like that, yeah, roughly. I don't know if folks have seen the modular going up. We did that to reduce the time in the field predominantly. We had some lead up time before Kelly moved out. So we used that with that and went over to design those modules off-site and have them brought in. So it reduces the time in the field. We're designing this the same way. I'm not saying yet which way we'll go, but we are thinking of that. Sure.
The other thing is as you maintain level, the public sidewalk is going down.
Yeah.
You might want to think about what happens at the end of your level, because people are going to be walking on yours and then discover, oh, wait a minute, I'm in the wrong place. So they may need stairs at Park Street, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we looked at that. That's a good point. It was a trade-off between walking under that where the green is, or under that banner. We looked at walking, bringing residents or patrons or the public, frankly, through there and then dropping down with stairs onto Park Street. We thought it was better, we think it's better to bring people up into a retail establishment that has outdoor seating and indoor seating on that corner, perched above high the street. We thought that was better than people walking through. That's as best we can come up with.
One final question. In terms of your actual construction, generally in the city, you can't build before 7 a.m. Do you intend to obey that? Because you're going to be about 40 feet from my bedroom.
701?
7:01. I'll even give you 7:01. But 6:58, you get on the call.
Okay.
All right. Great questions, Charlie. It's probably worth, since we have, looks like a lot of questions, everyone one question, and then if we have time for more, we can come back for second questions for people. I don't know, do you want to call out? Whose hand was up first?
Is it possible to actively design a configuration that would encourage a market to go into the building and somehow make a really tangible effort, to procure that a market as a tenant use all the buildings that are going up? It's creating a neighborhood. I mean, it just would seem actually to attract more tenants for ease of marketing, as well as servicing people who were wanting to encourage Beverly, I believe, walking, being able to easily get to market. And
Groceries, you mean?
groceries,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry if I didn't
Yeah.
make that clear. And so
Yeah.
since this is early on, I'm just sort of wondering,
Yeah, I've called Henry's, and if anyone has a contact to help, they declined to come to our buildings. I called Roche Brothers, who does Brothers Marketplace. They said,
Could
good
you-
luck in the North Shore, there's too many.
Maybe just repeat what he was saying, maybe repeat that question so we can all hear it.
A supermarket or groceries, some kind of grocery store market for people to,
so there are two chains of small markets I'm aware of in Boston. Foodies, there's one in South Boston on Broadway, and they also have another one on Washington Street in the South End.
Yeah.
Be Fresh in Davis Square. Those are really urban,
Yeah.
smaller scale
Yeah.
markets,
Yeah.
without big parking lots, typical.
Trader Joe's.
Those, yeah. Yeah, they do different
They have it.
configurations, they seem
In
to be
Brookline,
willing
it's
to
not
adapt.
big. It's not much
we
parking.
will try. We want a market too. In fact, I wonder if at Homes, Beverly, the Sarah Barnett building, she has a market that's coming, I think, that has retail there. That has
Yeah, but I think
Restaurant.
that's really,
part of the restaurant.
yeah, it's very.
Not the same
yeah,
footprint.
Not everything.
One of our first generations of this had this covered walkway going all the way across. And what we thought was, we really wanted to get the glass out to the face, and that would be the logical place for a market. I mean, if you build it, they will come kind of thing. This corner would be the place for it. Will they come? I don't know. But rather than being set back, we've pulled the glass all the way out to the corner to try to encourage that.
Well, it's a star market.
Why
in
not give
Boston
some
and
space to the farmer's market like they do in Boston, have a year-round farmer's market?
They could be indoors in one of these, but we also have that plaza deck, they could operate up there to some degree. But we do want to actually think about, we're talking to the city about widening the sidewalk on Railroad so that we could do some active use right on the sidewalk adjacent on Railroad. Yeah, we're open to that. Go ahead.
You mentioned that the parking garage will have exactly a number of spaces as there are apartments. Have you considered what the parking ramification will be for the multiplicity of restaurants that you're planning to have in there and retail businesses?
Yes. There's more than 114 spaces in the garage.
There's 160.
But that's one
160.
place per apartment,
So,
but that's not.
We're following the ordinance, is what we're doing for parking. Is subscribed by, as prescribed by zoning for the retail parking. So there's railroad parking and a whole MBTA garage that's right there too. Yes.
Is this building have any green features, or do any of the other Beverly Crossing properties have any green features?
We do solar on all of our buildings. This one and the plaza deck will have some green roof elements that absorb water. We're looking at doing composting. We do recycling. We pay for recycling in all of our buildings. Of course, being stretch zone or stretch code, everything is high efficiency in terms of windows. And actually, if we build modular, the waste is handled off-site. It's built more green off-site.
We do electric charging stations for vehicles as well. And the way the current codes are now written, if you do a building following the current code, you're automatically making it extremely energy and water efficient. But in addition to that, we like to do the white roofs and the solar panels. Charging stations make sense. For bicycles, that kind of stuff all makes sense as well.
One more, that's a good point. We've tried to study very hard where the trash is coming in and out, where people are moving in and out. That's a very important note that you get right, so that you don't queue up cars on Rantoul Street as best you can. We can't control everything, but we have an entrance dedicated off of Pleasant Street that does have parking where that black van is. So there's doors there for a trash compactor, for the retail trash, and for people to walk in and go move their furniture up through the elevators easily right off of the side street. So they shouldn't be on Rantoul Street or Park. We thought that was the quietest place for that activity to happen.
You were talking about having the city widen the sidewalks. I mean, it's not, we have parking on both sides of that street
You
in
do,
that
but
section, I
it's,
believe.
yeah.
So it's not like we can encroach much more into that
Yeah.
area, whereas you're taking up an entire block. Maybe you can actually give up some space for that widening of the sidewalk.
It's actually, I think, 8 feet.
Yeah, the curb-to-curb dimension on Railroad is 68 feet, where you typically would have 60. So there's 8 extra feet. Whether the city decides they want to widen that or not is obviously up to the city. I know personally, when I get to the top of Railroad and I'm at the light, it's almost a little too wide, and I find myself going left, but somebody's going right.
It's a left, right,
It seems a little
center thing.
confusing.
Coming up from Park?
Yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah.
they've got it as
Up
3.
Railroad. Up Railroad.
No, they've got it as 2.
It's, in
Coming
any
up
event,
Railroad.
It's a wide too.
it's a little, my mind, it's a little too wide. And I think whether that land accrues to the park and Estelle's farmer's market, or it accrues to this side and that walkway to the depot is a little wider, it seems like it should not be asphalt, but it should be, it can be one or the other.
Well,
It's
aren't
not our
lanes
decision,
marked
of
now?
course.
I mean, it used to be a little bit more confusing, but I think they're marked now, so it shouldn't be
Does
that
help.
confusing to you.
One of the things I know the city's looking at is angled parking there too, on both sides, so that could create wider sidewalks potentially. It's up to the city, I don't, we're
Right.
studying it.
Well, I
now.
mean, but I'm saying, and throw the ball back to you, you can always give up a little space too.
Well, there's too much public space.
It's too much fun.
Yeah, if there's 8 extra feet for the city to work with, that's before angling, to get the appropriate dimensions for parking, drive lanes, and so that sidewalk that's there now could be 8 feet bigger and could still function on Railroad the way it is.
So to shamelessly plug the depot study that we've referenced before, that whole area down by the depot, there's so much paved space
Yeah.
that's kind of a no man's land.
Yeah.
Like I know driving to the train, taking the left off of Broadway, there's like 4 lanes worth, and you might see like a bus and an Uber driver behind the parked cars, and taxis across adjacent to Adele Park. So I think part of the study, we'll probably look at the railroad Ave side as well, and look at the parking and sidewalk space, and look at opportunities for how to make it better public space. So to jump ahead, that's part of like the kind of commentary that we would like to solicit from Ward 2 members and neighbors on things you'd like to see around the depot area as they study that for a redesign. So if you have like specific comments that you think of.
No, I was
you'd like to
just
see.
building off of his,
Yeah.
honestly, and I was just, giving the city, giving them more space for their restaurant.
We would love to widen this and have an active farmer's market here in warm weather all the time. That's not
So full disclosure, I operate the farmer's market. But I just want everybody here to know that there's also no side deal going on between the farmer's market and Beverly Crossing. Just so you know. But I
You're not getting the carrots or
appreciate.
anything?
No, yeah, I don't even get carrots for free, okay? But just so you know, I really respect and appreciate the support I get in this room for the market, so thank you.
Can I piggyback on that question? So is there still a plan to close Railroad Ave on Mondays? And all that parking and restaurants in this depiction, you can't drive up there because we have our fantastic farmers market on Railroad and at the park.
So I'll put on my farmer's market hat and say that what I've been talking to with my team and my vendors is that expect change in the next couple of years, and we're just gonna have to go with the flow. And if there are a number of businesses that move into that space that don't want their road shut down every Monday, then I'm gonna have to respond to that as the market director. And it could be that there are businesses that are just closed on Mondays and don't mind that happening. So it will just be a matter of being part of the change, so.
Indoor farmers market space.
All right, Greg's not gonna let up on that.
I know this isn't a decision that would be yours completely, but I was wondering if you had in your design discussion with the city about making Pleasant Street between Park and Rantoul a two-way instead of the one-way going down. Charlie,
How do I get in my garage?
you go up the street in it.
I can't, because I have to stand there. I will block a lane of traffic while I'm waiting to go in my garage. I've almost gotten kissed there about 5 times.
Well, okay, that aside, which I hadn't considered.
My sudden death
That
aside,
one little
keep going.
section is one way, and since we've already changed the next section of Pleasant, it just seems like that would open more opportunities. People could get around up to Rantoul without having to detour and disrupt the farmer's market.
Yes, there is.
I know it's a,
one way the other way, would that help?
yeah, it's a Rubik's Cube type of thing, but I didn't know if that was something that you had maybe talked about or thought about.
We're studying the traffic in the area again. We've studied it, but we're going to do it again and take new counts because the 1A improvement's complete now. So we'll learn things, but I don't think you'll hear from us that we want to change the direction of the street or anything like that.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sean Cahill. I live on Goat Hill. I take the train into Boston every day. And I'm a little confused about this project, and I'm hoping you can help me understand it. This is a historical block. There's 2 railroad hotels next to a historical depot. You can see one of the only places left in the country like that. There's one of the first car factories in the world. So there's 3 historical buildings on the block. I testified to the Beverly Historical Commission and to some state historical agency in support of this neighborhood being designated a historical neighborhood. That was done by the state agency. Immediately after that, National Grid tore down a whole block of buildings along River Street. Your company accepted $1 million tax break in exchange for preserving this block with its 3 historical buildings. Now you're talking about tearing down the block and putting this there. And so my question is, how is that ethical? How does that square with you're accepting the $1 million tax break and accepting the designation of this historical district? How is it even legal? And why couldn't you at least incorporate one of the historical buildings, like you did here with Montserrat School Drive? Why couldn't you incorporate, say, the Casa de Luca building? But instead what you've given us is an all or nothing. You're going to level all the history and put up this building, which really could be anywhere in the country. It says nothing about the local history. So please explain.
We did not accept $1 million tax break back then. Historic tax credits were applied to a Beverly project.
Okay.
The tax credits went to, I don't even know where they went. They get put out and people buy them. I don't know who took advantage of them. We didn't take advantage of them. I was not at the leadership level of when all that happened. I understand the Windover Development name is on it. All I can say is I was not there. I don't know what led to those decisions to do that. I don't know. I was an estimator at the time at Windover. We have studied this block, as I said in the beginning, extensively. If we were to renovate those projects, those 3 buildings, and build a 31-unit project, we would be $7.7 million underwater when we're stabilized, and the rents would be $2,500 average on a project that yields 50 units. No bank would finance it. We'd have to come up with $16 million in equity and get a $10 million loan from a bank. If we get tax credits, we can get 40% of hard construction costs back into the project. We did another historic tax credit project. That would only lose about $5.7 million at the end of the day. If we charged $5 rents, which would be roughly $4,000 a month, we could break even on a project. I know the economic case doesn't fly with everybody. We have studied everything from lifting and moving the building over to 2 Hardy Street, the Casa building. We've looked inside and out at the press box. It is totally destroyed, and we didn't do that work in there. It was butchered from beginning when we bought it. We've looked at the stucco that was put on the side of the chiropractor building and taking that off and seeing what's under it. We've looked at parking around it. We've looked at what we might need for relief and building codes and elevators. It is all very expensive. Construction costs are 54% more than when we built Burnham. I know the rents are up, but construction costs are considerable. This is looking roughly at $390,000 per unit to build, roughly. If we built it for 50 units, if we did a rehab project, it would be almost $590,000 per unit to build. And if someone says, well, let's just do condos, we'd have to sell condos for $650,000. 50 of them. Not affordable ones. I just don't see how that works. I totally understand the public trust issue. If I made those decisions that led to that, I might be in a different place. I don't know what happened. I don't know why they did that. I wasn't there. I don't know. But I don't want to say I'm not accountable to them. We've been wrestling with this for years. I know we can do this project. I know what local historic can do. I know what the state and federal can do. And we think this is the right project for Beverly. I'm sorry you disagree. I know, I understand. Not everyone's going to disagree, and in all of our developments, people don't disagree. I mean, people don't agree. I'm not sure what else to say. Sorry.
Let me follow up on that, because I've been following this for many, many years. Press box in 2009 was going to be sold to a nonprofit and fixed up. Now, unfortunately, the deal fell through, but Wendy Pearl from the Historic District Commission and I were going to nominate this whole area to the National Register because we anticipated the CPA, Community Preservation Act, would pass. That could have been, funds could have been used to fix that building up, non-profit. Casa de Luca building was in great shape and was a functioning business before you bought it. So I just don't understand why you're trying to say it's not our fault. When I sat down with Andrew DeFranza and talked about this, he said, we even looked at the press box, but we were told to stay away. He didn't elaborate on who told him that, but I could imagine. Now you're saying you're new to this job, that these decisions were made by other people. Steve Dodge was the founder of the company. It's his vision. I believe you guys knew this block was coming down and you've always wanted to tear it down for a long time. Lee Delaker sent an email to me saying they're working hard, they can possibly save part of the building, and yet in another statement he said, we need the underground parking and these buildings are in the way. And when he said that, they did have plans to save the Casa de Luca. So there's a lot of mistruth behind this. When Steve Dodge came down here for the Board 2 meeting, he said, we do listen, our company does listen to the concerns of the neighbors. It seems like you don't listen to us. You do what you want, you shove these plans down our throat, and we have to accept them whether we like it or not. How many people here are underwhelmed by the architecture of that building? I certainly am. It doesn't fit in.
How many people have approached us to help us? To say, hey, I got an idea, in the last 6 years?
Because you've always...
No one.
Because you've
No
always
one's
put
come to
up
say,
this
"I'll buy it."
wall. You've always put up this wall.
There's
of
no wall,
community.
we're on Rantoul Street, 15 Rantoul. We do neighborhood meetings for everything.
I have reached out to Lee Delaker at that time. I asked him what's going on with the tax rate. I get ignored. So I think you're trying to say one thing, and really there's a reality. You guys went before a state agency and said, we are committed to the district. Commitment means you do what the Cabot Cinema has done. Steve Dodge has done a great job fixing the Cabot Cinema up. Why can't we take the nonprofit approach? Think outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
With my show on cable access, I profiled lots of eyesores that are not feasible to restore, but nonprofits can get in there and do some wonderful things to bring them back. You're focused on the wrong thing. It should be, how can we save this district? You should keep your word to the Mass Historic Commission. We are committed to this district. That shows me you're not committed to it. Emma, I believe you also brought up the fact that you let the weeds grow around the press box for so long, and year after year we had to say, when are you guys going to cut down the weeds? And it seemed like we were running into roadblocks with that. Like you wanted to make the buildings really ugly on purpose so people would get pissed off at them and say, tear them down. This has been an issue with you guys. So, Sean, stick to your guns. I mean, we, in Beverly, we would like to have a community relationship with you. You're the trustee of Montserrat.
Mm-hmm.
Your company's going to wipe out a historic district. This company went before a state agency and said one thing and did another. Lee Delaker was quoted in the paper saying, these buildings are too expensive to fix up. Then when the Mass Historic Commission said, okay, you're not getting your tax credits, he said, demolition's just a preferred option, and they could be restored if maybe we look at the historic tax credits. That's a lie when two things don't add up. Are you proud of that?
I'll have to talk to Lee. I don't know, he's not.
Well, I know you also were under his wing for many, many years.
As an
We used to
estimator.
see you at the planning board meetings. So this all goes back to 5 years ago and what you guys had planned. I believe there are nonprofits that could do wonders with those buildings. If you guys would just take a different approach, maybe work with the community. But we get a sense that you come in here and you have in your mind the way things want to be done. Some people on design review also say that you're not receptive about suggestions with the design of your buildings. That once you have something set in stone, this is it. So that's my piece right there.
I like historic preservation. I would love to see a more historic looking facade on this building, but we need housing. That's what we need.
So let's tear down the Cabot, let's tear down the Balch House, let's tear down all the historic buildings we have, let's wipe out all the Victorians and build big high-rises.
Let's renovate McKay.
That was a part, yeah, and that was a good job, and people thanked you for that. So why in this situation are you treating it different? This is a historic district that could bring in tourism. There is no real historic district like this in the state, centered around transportation history, and we're just going to throw it away. What is your memorial going to say when you dedicate this plaza to that district? There's more that you could have done to save these, and a lot of things have been going on behind the scenes to prevent us. The mayor certainly didn't want to hear anything we had to say. He just wanted to push this. So when you talk about bringing ideas to the table, we get stonewalled here in Beverly.
Thanks, Matt.
Yes, has this design been approved by design review and also by the planning board?
We have only shown it.
This meeting is pre those two boards?
Correct.
Okay. And considering the sensitivity of the historic area and the historic buildings that exist in there now, the first building you put up on the corner of Pleasant and Rantoul was, I thought, a great looking building. Considering modern times and so forth. Why did you put this up there? Or why do you want to put this in that area? Considering the sensitivity of the historic sensitivity of the situation.
Why would we not build something like this but more historic looking? Is that the question?
Yeah. I mean, as I say, the first building, for example, Charlie lives in. That looks conducive to historic Beverly. But this is not historic at all. Those buildings are not historic at all. The ones that are up there right now, it seems as if you, from the start of the first building, you've everything is steadily in design, steadily gone downhill to what we see in front of us right here today. And I don't understand, don't you have any sense of pride in your work in terms of design? I mean, I really don't understand, what you're doing. And I fault the design review board also for their approval in the last several buildings that have been put up.
If I could just jump in for 1 minute, I think first of all, this is an amazing turnout. And this is why I brag about the Ward 2 Civic Association. For its leadership, for the presentations we get before anyone else, even city boards get these presentations, we get them first. I think it's really important as we ask questions and we struggle with our very passionate kind of disagreement with design for some of us. I think it's really important that we remember that even though I may not be super excited about the way that looks, a professional designed that. So I think just as we're wording our questions and our opinions, please try to remain respectful for the fact that we're all professional people. We're all citizens working for the better of Beverly, and just to word our comments in a respectful way that doesn't necessarily insult someone's integrity. Let's say that. I think it's okay to say, can you tell me more about why you're proud of this building and why you would not be proud to put historic preservation there instead? That's a more respectful way of wording that than saying, whatever, you guys know what I'm getting at. But I'm just going to put that out there as we go
Could you
forward.
answer the question, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. Well said.
The inspiration image and part of the language that's in Beverly for visuals, for the architecture, we would love to do historic granite sills. We would love to do black I-beam headers above each window as well. We'd love to do more historic elements that make it more historic.
Is that what your original building? What you're describing, is that what in your original
No,
building?
I'm trying to say, if I programmed those kinds of embellishments into the project, I know that economic feasibility would increase tremendously. We've built many of these before in the city. We know what these things cost. And if we don't have some kind of coming back to some simplicity. We can't build it like we used to. I don't know what else to say. It is so expensive to build. If we don't do the basics right, we lose all feasibility completely. I don't know what else to say to that. If we could get masons to build, we would, but.
Well, there's no green space involved here. I know you're going to say that Odell Park is the green space, but there's no green space on your sidewalks, or for that matter, on the interior of the buildings, in that horseshoe area inside the building. There's no green space there, other than a tree. I mean, can't you design something with some green space and some mulch, and so on, making it get a garden effect as opposed to concrete?
Well, it's north facing and it's on top of a parking garage. So the idea of having a park on top of that just isn't feasible, isn't going to work, isn't going to technically work. I think if you look closely enough at this building, these punched openings in a brick wall are Rantoul Street down Rantoul Street. I'm not sure what isn't historic about that. It's hard to see in this rendering. There's a very simple brick cornice at the top of that building. That's the very same simple brick cornice that's on top of the Porter Mill building. These elements are there if you look. However, it's 2019, it's not 1899, and the building should look a little bit more forward. The folks who are coming in here and renting these units want something a little cleaner and a little more modern. So we're working that in. To Chris's point, there are costs in creating some of the historic detail that we can't put into the building. Well, we've gone a long way, and I also will take great exception to the idea that Matt said that we do not listen to the design review board. Emily can tell you how many times we've gone back and forth with the design review board, and we've incorporated many times their suggestions, and we've gone to the planning board and many times said, we thank very much the design review board's input, they've made it a better project.
I only say that because I've talked to a couple of members of the design review, so it's not everyone feels that way. Some people do agree with you, though.
I mean, I don't see buildings like that in Marblehead or in Portsmouth or in Newburyport. I don't see buildings like that. I see some historic buildings that are conducive with our history, City of Beverly history. And as somebody mentioned, you're going to take the Hale House and demolish it and put condominiums up there too? I mean, we have no more left, any more history left in our city as these things are developed.
Ron, thanks. We want to try to get hear from everybody. So keep it moving.
Forgive my layperson ignorance. Regarding the garage being dug down, have soil tests or what's the water table? Has that been tested that it's even feasible? And if it's not feasible, does that mean there'll only be half the parking?
There's a 42-inch drain pipe that runs down Pleasant Street that is 4 feet lower than our lowest level. And we are not as low as the Depot condos lower garage. We're not going to be any lower than that. We have done borings and we will dig a test pit in the lower corner in the next couple months to see the groundwater, but we know it's lower than our lowest level.
So,
thanks. So, and I know we've talked about this before, but I think a good question for me to hear the answer for, maybe for this group, would be, what would it take for you to preserve the capacity of the building? Just I just in terms of community engagement, or how much would you have to shift that project to incorporate that building? And I think I've asked you this before, so it's not totally blindsiding you. But
yeah, no, I understand. So it's hard for me to articulate everything that's in my mind as a developer when you look at these kinds of situations. But the only thing I can say is that as soon as you take one of the pieces out of the block, it's only 180 feet by 200 feet, I think, 180 by roughly. If you take one piece out and you lose that efficiency to park in a circle, which is actually what this block facilitates very well, is a circle of parking. As soon as that circle breaks, you're down to almost a 50-unit project plus the renovated project that roughly yields like a 3% return. And in a 5.25 cap rate environment, you're underwater by a lot of money. So if you finish one of those buildings, pick any one, you're underwater on one. The rest of the block suffers even more. And I keep saying economically, it's not the best argument in the world is to look at economics, but you have to, because if you can't get a bank, if you can't get an investor, you don't have anything. You can't make it work. So what would it take? It's the loss of the building around it, as well as the premium to renovate any one of those three buildings. And that's what you lose.
So that's what it takes to not do it. What would it take to do it? And that's a big question. What would it take to actually do that, to respond to this community's request for, we want a historic building there, right? Like what would it take, like a gigantic fundraising effort to make up for that loss? Like just thinking creatively. I'm not committing you to anything. I'm just curious because I don't know what it's like to develop a block of property.
Sure.
I barely own a house, so I get that that's beyond my thinking.
Right.
So tell me, just dreaming out loud,
So-
what would it actually take to do that and make it a feasible effort, feasible project for you?
I'll do the math, and I'll tell you, I can tell you exactly what it is, not here, sitting here. But one other challenge to make the rest of the block work, let me give you one example. If the average rent is, say, $2,000, or whatever the number is, for what we would build, is it feasible for the remaining project that we're saying is left over, for those rents to be $2,300 average? You know, you're saying, what's the price? It could be ongoing rents that are really high that are hard to achieve, that I know Homes has had some issues with because they're very high rents. We try to be a little more market sensitive with our rents and not build too astronomically Class A plus stuff that's like Seaport, crazy glass. Anyways, so I can give you the numbers, but that's probably part of the answer, is the rest of the project now is rents that, are they achievable? They're probably really high, I don't know. But I can give you the brass tacks numbers. If you say, let's preserve Casa and get 4 one-bedroom units or 2 3-bedrooms, because I know you can get that. And then you have 1,900 feet of a restaurant retail with no ADA access. That project would be almost 2.6-ish million to renovate that. That's what that would cost. And I would lose money at the end unless I charged astronomical rents for those units. The delta that I lose is 16 units in this building. So I have to recover that somehow in the rest of the project. The loss of those 16 units at 390,000 or whatever it is. That starts to paint the picture of the problem. And it's not easy because it's not, you build one house, sell it for this, and get an offset. It's rents, it's ongoing, there's banks, there's leverage, it's hard to do. So but I'll do it. Is it Casa that can move it?
I mean, I just think that, you understand the reasons not to do it. I think a lot of us don't care about the reasons not to do it. So, and I know we're speaking slightly different languages, but it's a loss. It's a loss of the historic district. It's a loss of architecture that some of it is falling apart, and I understand unpreservable, but it's still a loss. And there are people in the world who prioritize preserving. I get that that's not what Beverly Crossing does all the time. I get that it's happened in little spaces and I appreciate it, but I think it's just, for me, I think it's a matter of really trying to wrap my mind around, is it really impossible, and what can we do to make it possible?
There's 2 scenarios I can look at. We could lift Casa, put the parking under it, and create housing around it, put it back down. Or I could just carve it out and block it off and build it, renovate it and then build something around it. I can look at both those scenarios. I'm happy to do that.
All right, we have some more questions on this side of the room.
My biggest concern about all of this is just the scale. It seems every block that gets developed has to be 6 stories solid, and you got a giant block there. Those photos, it dwarfed 131, which is a pretty big building, And to me, it's like, I also, the Casa Loop is the one that kills me to knock down. The others, I kind of feel the ship has sailed, and I can't picture how the Casa would look with that building, and I don't really have a problem with the modern look of that building somewhere else. but it's like right there on a historic, on the park. Like, why, there's lower scale developments built plenty of places that must make money, you know, why couldn't you preserve the casa and do some smaller townhouse-like block of nice urban townhouses in there and something, instead of a 6-story massive, solid, you know, fortress, that the whole street is just becoming a canyon of these, one after another. That's my issue, not really the look of it, but just the continued, you know, massiveness of everything.
It's what the city voted on for
Yeah,
zoning. It's what it is, it's a zoning.
Yeah, I know you can do it, but does that make for the best, if every block is that way?
We studied taking away one level of parking and just park one and build like 4 stories above it or 5, whatever it was, 55 feet, trying to see what that would yield. It was negative. It was negative. And then if you put casa in there, it's going to be even more. I wish that there was a way to, yes, sir.
Is there some way to preserve the facade somehow?
Of casa?
Yeah.
And build like behind it?
Yep. I know it's done in other places.
Well, the interesting thing about the casa facade is that everything you see, except for the very top cornice, is from 1973 when they renovated, 1983 rather, when they renovated it. The building form is original, the cut corner,
But what you
and
see
where the
is-
windows are more or less original, except for the ones on Rantoul Street, which are not. It's down the side of Railroad Avenue, there's an entrance that got taken away. There used to be a billiard hall apparently in the basement years ago. So what you're looking at now, literally what you're looking at now, except for the red band on the very top, was put there in 1983. Above that band originally was a really cool balustrade that's just not there anymore. The width, it's so it's not like a building where you rehab the sash and you get them to work with the old weights, and then if you go inside the Casa de Luca building, it's suspended ceilings. All of the walls have been taken down and put back with plaster in 1983 trim. There's no sense of this railroad hotel except on the 3rd floor, which has also all brand new walls, all brand new trim, and a suspended ceiling. It's not like you go in there and then you find the tin ceiling and the old wainscoting and the great old bathrooms.
But that's not
But he said facade, I guess.
But the facade is not the facade. That shape is not the original. So we thought that getting the public to be able to get onto this terrace area with a big wide berth right from that corner, and having them come in and even bring the market in over and have some public art there was more valuable than keeping that building there, especially because of the scale issue of a 3-story building.
But you're saying just the clapboards, the look or the actual clapboards that are
Look,
there?
if you look at that square as it is, that's what we're talking about. I mean, if you look at it, we have a beautiful post office at one end, a very historic, gorgeous depot at the other end. And then we have these 2 old hotels that, you know, one might say that somebody bought the casa and let it fall into the ground so that it would be easier to redevelop it. We won't say that, but we could. And the other one was definitely destroyed by the previous owner and, you know, the press box building. But that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about exact balustrade, we're not talking about tin ceilings, we're talking about a beautiful square that's gonna be gone, and you're gonna put up that monstrosity. And I'm sorry, but it's ugly. It's a big box, and it does not fit with the post office and the depot. We already lost the other side to whatever that little liquor store is, and the machine shop behind it. We don't need to lose this side, do we? Can we do something to preserve it, like he was talking, maybe just a facade, but I mean, I would like to see more, obviously.
So that corner, we could do with yellow clapboards and the red windows maybe, is that kind of the thought?
It's not the colors, it's the presence, it's
The scale of the neighborhood.
Yes.
What you're changing is quite dramatic. That's what I'm hearing from the comments.
Yeah, I think the scale is really enough.
And the reason I say that is that when you're outside and you're in the park, you went to the post office, you had a train or whatever, the outside, as you're looking across from whatever point in that middle area, it's beautiful. And putting that huge building up, it's almost, it reminds me of the controversy they had in Boston with the building that went up that cut the light off into the public gardens, into the Boston Common. It's gonna change the whole feel. And the people, I live near there, the people that live near there and that go there all the time, right? It's gonna change, it's an aesthetic thing. It's something that, you know, as a developer, you really have to think about that. It's important.
Jay's had her hand up for a while.
I just had a quick question for you. You talked about the historical aspects of the railroad. Why not take part, you talked about lifting the house and dropping it down the concrete block. Why not make that a historical spot with railroad paraphernalia? What about telling the story of Beverly's Railroad? Talk about what happened in the days. Give them someplace like a Cabot Street. Not, doesn't have to look like that. I mean, but give it some historical value, that this spot right here has some value to us in Beverly, if we're all staying. You said that the people of Beverly voted for this. We obviously didn't. So maybe the city did.
For the ordinance?
But
the tall.
But we don't know about it till they're digging the ground. That's why you have people that get angry, because they would like to be informed.
We are working with Historic Beverly to memorialize some kind of tasteful.
Just something space that the historical Beverly can say that this has historical relevance to us.
Yeah.
The railroad's here, this is how it started, this is what Beverly grew up with. And
well, we want to tell that story because we did it at 131 with the Ultra Solo dealership. It's inside. We did a very big graphic inside of the old showroom in there, and I think people like it with old historic photos. We try to tell the story of the block.
right, but I'm talking about a building that would make people that come off the train and say, oh, let's visit this historical spot where railroad started here in Beverly, and the people were so proud of. Again, not just looking at another 6-foot story building with concrete pad. If you can or cannot go in to get a sandwich. I mean, that's all I think everyone's looking for.
I looked at what you guys did with the Mozart dorms, which I think looks great. And you took, I don't know if that, I think that was mostly new, but it has the feel of an old building, but also modern. And it connects old and new, and it works. And it's of a reasonable scale. I think people would be receptive to something down there that was, if you could preserve maybe the cast off, and on the rest of the block do something just that wasn't quite so overpowering, you know, but still got in, you know, a lot of residential and retail, but in just a softer way.
Thank you for coming here, even though it's intense. I know it can be intense a little bit, but we appreciate you coming here either way. Earlier you spoke about the public art opportunity, and you spoke about having a place for people to gather and congregate. And something that kind of struck me too is that it's 6 floors, and that is the zoning. I understand that. But we don't get to see any of that view that you talk about that's so beautiful in all the buildings. And that's something that always bothers me. I don't know if it's not feasible or if it's not a goal for you to have that in a business sense or a point of view, but we never get to see those, like the rooftops, or like in Salem there's a restaurant on top of one of the hotels, and I feel like that's super valuable for the entire city and community because you get to enjoy those views. So we get the 6th-floor buildings and we never get to see anything, we just get it blocked. So that's something that really bothers me. I mean, you could have green space and have a beautiful like gathering place in terms of on top of the buildings, and it seems like that's never even considered when it's possible, because it happens in Boston all the time and it's happened in Salem. So I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
That's a good point. I met with CHM to do a hotel here, a full hotel, and we've looked at those numbers. We're looking at doing a partial hotel that might be 16 beds on the first floor, the back side of Park Street and Pleasant Street, with access to the roof deck, with amenity for the hotel guests and our residents to have access to the roof deck. We are exploring that. This is not an 80-story building in Boston that you have that sort of.
Salem's is in 80 stories.
No, I know, but I'm saying the
I'm talking
separation
about
and
a restaurant,
security.
not really like, what you're saying is people that go to the hotel and that live there, or, they're the ones that are, I'm talking about like a restaurant, like public use, people that like go to a restaurant or something, they could actually go there.
So a restaurant.
And like actually enjoy the view. Like if we're gonna have all these buildings around us that are 6 floors and it's gonna happen, then why can't there be like some enjoyment from the community of the height of these buildings? If we're gonna have the height, we might as well get some type of, it's nice to be able to see some heights and some views of the ocean and, the park and different things. If we're going to have these 6-floor buildings, I don't understand why it's not possible for us to enjoy a view if we're going to a restaurant or something.
So the public would come up to the roof deck?
A restaurant, like in Salem.
Restaurant.
In Salem.
Public,
In Salem, there's a restaurant.
Instead of having all the retail on the ground floor.
You could have a restaurant that uses the roof and, they could have a roof restaurant and be able to enjoy the roof deck. I see that you have solar panels on there, I get that, but you could have even a portion of it. They did it in Salem, I don't know why it's never a design point or.
if you're talking about Hotel Salem, I did email them to see if they want to be the operator here and be able to do that, but I haven't been there myself, so. You're saying it is a bar, public can go to it and enjoy it, whether they stay there or not.
Yeah.
You're saying. So a restaurant of some sort.
It would be a nice view.
Yeah, being outside, if you're gonna have these huge buildings, I mean, I understand that your viewpoint is to get affordable
That's
housing
nothing,
to
it's
Beverly, and I
historical.
appreciate that. And I understand that there's a cost to doing what you're doing. But the downside for us is that we have this 6-floor building that, we can't ever enjoy. That if there's a disadvantage is the height, we never get to enjoy the advantage, which is the height to
Sure.
see from the view.
So from our standpoint, we just have to understand the security of having public and restaurant and bar up high with residents being able to have quiet enjoyment as well. We just have to figure out how that works.
Okay.
I appreciate the comment.
All right, thanks guys, we're running to like 10 minutes left, so thank you for the questions, Emma. If everyone can keep maybe their question to like 15 seconds, give more people a chance. Hannah had her hand up for a while.
Okay.
How committed are we to the actual design versus the input we're hearing tonight? Is that concise?
Well,
Exceeded all the expectations.
Do you want me to reword that?
no, I'm just trying to think of a way to answer. Well, I guess as I said, we've come a long way. We've been working with Steve to get this far. We feel this is kind of the direction he wanted to go. We want to honor that.
Because the community feels so strongly about the preservation aspect, if there's a way that you can keep working rather than
Yeah.
the historic Beverly in the city, there's other people who have voices. I mean, I respect the design. I don't think it's hideous, but I think it's out of place. And so if there's a way we can incorporate the input you're hearing.
I think if we can work with that to figure out if there's comments or things that we can do that aren't off the charts, yeah, we're willing to listen to anything. Putting the public on the roof deck. I'm not opposed to that. I just, having built these, we know kind of, I don't want to say that. We're open to ideas, that's all I can say. And I don't know if this is the right place for all the ideas to come out and we come back to you with a revised thing, but this is the process. So I can't say I'm not open to it. That's why we're here. So we want to hear them and try to incorporate as best we can. The one about the facade for CASA, we can think about how to put clapboards on that side. Feels like the vision might get lost a little bit, but preserving the whole building might be a way to do it. We'll look at it. That's why we're here early.
Are you posting these renderings and plans and anything like that on the web?
Not
So
tonight.
you can review them?
They'll be public in 2 months.
Right, once they get filed, I mean, once plans get filed with the city, whether it's what you see tonight or something modified, they go up on the public website that the
So
city has.
there's no way we can have.
I understand your point. Maybe where there's a way to exchange ideas before the permit. Let me think about that, yeah.
I mean, I came in late, so I didn't even see the whole presentation about the different pictures and everything, so.
Sure.
I just wonder if there's some way we can see them.
Our office is 15 Rantoul Street, come down. Come see me in the conference room and we'll roll out the plans, we'll bring this guy and we'll see what we can do. I'm open to that, I'm not. Yes.
Yeah, first, thank you, as I've said, for coming this evening. Perhaps you're not particularly surprised by perhaps some of the reaction. And I certainly get the numbers. I mean, I missed most of your presentation because I was at City Hall meeting with the mayor talking about next year's budget, so I haven't understand the need to make the numbers work. Part of what I hear is people are obviously not overwhelmingly happy with the design. I just want to share my own personal take on it. In looking at it, and again, I don't know the history, and I assume a lot of work's already gone into it. It strikes me as fairly monolithic in terms of its size. Its scale is completely different than, and you've heard that already, than what we have now. When I think of that location, I think of it as the gateway to Beverly. I think of it not simply as from the historic part piece, which I completely get, and I share a lot of the the concern about that. I want a building at the gateway to our city that makes people proud, that is in a sense iconic. What we have right now at that location is an iconic sense of what Beverly is about. When you come in on that park or come in on the train, you've got Beverly Depot, which is an iconic building. You've got the post office, which is iconic. We have, what's left of what was once iconic. I really want to see a building. It doesn't have to be a Frank Gehry Bilbao museum, okay, style, okay, but a building that when people come into the city, or maybe come to the city because of the building, they look at this and say, wow, okay? And what I hear here is maybe I came in late, so maybe I missed something, but I don't hear anyone looking at the building saying, wow, this really speaks to us as something that makes us proud about Beverly and this unique gateway to the city. So I get the numbers, and I appreciate you coming, and I understand that you're a long way into the design process, but for what it's worth, that's my take. I look at all the work that went into preserving the cabin for what it was.
Yeah.
I know that folks have appreciate the nature of what the cabin means to the city. I want a building at that location that speaks to the residents of Beverly in the same kind of way that says, this is Beverly. And the building that's there now does make your numbers work, I get that. But I don't know where the design piece falls in terms of that.
I think if Steve were here, he'd say that was the charge for Samasco and Village to do. That was the charge. So it is hard to hear that we're not hitting that. We have put a lot of time and effort and
in unfairness, I haven't seen all the renders. I came into the end. I've only seen a little piece.
So one of the things we talked about was maybe so this is the difference of opinion. Maybe that corner element should be more glass. I don't know. Does someone want more modern? I've heard that from certain voices. Maybe it needs to be an iconic glass tower with more lights. Some people say that's too modern. Make it more historic. Make it smaller. It's hard to do all of that at once. So
I guess I would, for what it's worth, Chris, I would challenge you and your design team, because I think they're up to the challenge, to meet each one of those keys.
Sure.
Given enough push to say reach harder, reach farther.
Sure.
Maybe you can hit more keys. It's sort of like an athlete with a trainer, he's given a dissolve, the trainer says you can push harder and you do. So I guess that's what I would.
The elements of the depot or the post office, they're already there and iconic.
Work with them.
Would you work off of those?
Architectural.
It's not the direction you're going.
Well, it's very expensive to do. That's really, I don't know how you do those columns and that. It's just
Railroad depot in the United States.
We don't want it
when you
to,
built the post office.
maybe I should say, we don't want it to look
What's
contrived.
there?
We don't want it to look like a, well, Thad can speak better to this, a contrived historic building.
Right.
I'm not sure that's the best outcome.
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm talking about
Okay.
something that is, in its own unique way,
Yeah.
iconic, that makes the citizens of Beverly, when they see it, and when people come to the city and come to that square, look at it and say, this really is something special.
Sure.
I guess, to put it more simply. Yeah.
Different from all
It's
the
very
other
similar to
buildings.
the other buildings.
Scott, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
We had TIF zone legislation that would give pretty generous tax credits for residential development.
For increased height.
Right.
Yeah.
You also wanted to put in an element, like an extra protection for historic buildings, and then all of a sudden, it went away. I think the trouble is with preservation now is, yes, I understand that these buildings are a burden, but we should be having a national conversation about what do we stand for as a country. When you go over to Europe, you got buildings 800 years old, 1,000 years old. Here, things don't last that long, we tear them down. This is a special block. Here's the National Register District listing, part of it. Do we want to tear it up and throw it in the trash bin?
Matt, I don't necessarily think that what I'm talking about excludes that, just for the record. I mean, hey, listen, I'm not an architect, I'm not a designer. All I'm saying is my own personal view of what I think a gateway to Beverly, this very special, important gateway to Beverly should say to the world. And certainly something that the citizens of Beverly would respond to with that.
But I'm saying, though, if the conditions are not right to save these buildings, we should be having a conversation. What do we have to do as a community and as a country to make sure we don't lose historic districts? This is the first time this is going to happen. Beverly's going to make history for the wrong reasons. So we should be talking about it.
I have a quick question that could be a solution. A few years ago, a majority voted for the Community Preservation Act. And the funding for that, we're all paying extra in our taxes to fund that. And it's to pay for open space preservation, green space, and historical preservation. So why can't we use some of the CPA funds, city councilors, to preserve the Casa de Luca building and possibly the other buildings as well? And what is that money being used for instead?
I mean, I don't know all the details, if a historic preservation building has to be
I think it has to be designated, if what that said about the history of the building, I think the threshold question would be, is in a historic district, does the building qualify for historic treatment? And I don't know. I was kind of surprised to hear what that said, but
I don't know if we've had a privately owned building receive CPA funds yet.
But there is precedent.
So that's a really interesting thing to
You
explore.
have, to get the CPA funds, you would have to prove a public benefit for it.
Right.
So.
Like the golf and tennis club, for example, satisfied the
Or
GAR hall.
Because golf and tennis is open to the public.
Right.
That serves a public benefit. So if Beverly Crossing wants to apply for money and they can prove that there's a public benefit to do historic work on it, and the CPC agrees with that, yes, that is funded.
So I'm wondering if there's an opportunity between now and 2 months from now, when you're really applying for permitting, to come back to this group. I don't know if that's something that the Civic Association wants, or Stefano, that you would be willing to.
We're very popular, so I mean, schedule.
It's true. I've been sending people to you left and right, actually, so I know that's true. But I feel like this has been a very good conversation in a lot of ways. I don't think it's over, and not that I'm a huge fan of meetings, but it feels like it needs a follow-up to me. So I don't know if that's something that the association and Beverly Crossing is open to, or if you think that would be productive.
Could I ask a related question still? You're coming across as very eager for feedback. And I think you've heard the group is very eager to provide feedback. At the same time, you've made a very compelling argument that the economics say that you really have very little leeway. Even changing granite lintels may put the project underwater. So before, I think we asked them to come back, one of the things I'd want to ask you is, realistically, what do you think the likelihood is that you could incorporate design elements at this stage from the public? I mean, really, high, medium, low? I mean, or are we just having a nice chat?
If it's high, if we want to talk about brick versus certain different siding, we're open to
I mean,
that.
given the themes that you've heard, is it realistic to assume that you could accommodate some, many, most, none?
You have to take each one on the merits that if someone says, I want less scale, bring it down, it's not the right scale. That's a very different question than can we make it make less brick, use less brick. That's it. Those are different. If we want windows to be certain size, color, we're open to that. The plaza deck with all the interaction with the retail. If we want to talk about how to shape that or make it more green, those kinds of things, we're open to that.
You're not open to the scale, though, are you?
Sorry?
You're not open to smaller scale, are you? Yes or no?
I don't think, here's the thing. If this doesn't work for us, we could sell it, and someone's going to buy it for a lot more than what we paid, and they'll do probably more units than this. They'll probably ask for more units.
They have to come before us first.
No, they actually don't. They have to go to the planning board and design review.
They don't. And it may get turned down if they ask for 200 units, I don't know, but the market for Beverly, the waterfront property at Ventron just sold for $3.5 million for 62 units.
What, may I ask, what variances from the zoning are you requesting?
We don't require any variances. We require a special permit in this zoning district to allow for height above five stories.
Go 5 from 6.
Right.
And what is your incentive? My recollection is, in return for that extra height, you create extra units?
It's a 1 parking space per unit overlay zone. The relief is 75 feet. Site plan review.
So basically, you're building the zoning, basically.
Correct.
Right.
And if you don't build the zoning, someone else will build it.
I think someone else will. I don't take that lightly because it's not our intention. We have intentions of building something great here. And if this isn't the one, I'd love to have it.
You just brought up the Ventron site, so that's a smaller scale development that you guys designed originally. How can that? Huh? Yeah, but how can that be make in the and it's waterfront, so that cost them quite a bit. How can that be financially feasible?
I don't think it is.
A smaller scale development here can't be.
We couldn't make the numbers work it's too much risk for the ground, I think. But
well, there's other issues with that site, but
you worked
as far
with
as
us,
site,
Chris. You worked with the neighbors for many months at the meeting when you had your office on Rantoul Street. That zoning, Charlie, is the least restrictive zoning probably in the city. So it could have gone 7 feet high. It was industrial, IG. But the interesting thing is, and my question to you, Chris, is it too late for a group to come and meet and work with you? Because we were very successful on the design, along with Steve, of the Ventron project. It's only 3 stories high, 2 buildings or 3, I think. View corridors, beautifully landscaped, by law, the walkway, etc.
But
So
didn't get
we were
built.
very successful with that, working with you over the months, even right down to the color and the clapboard and the balconies, etc.
The red.
Yeah, the red. Is it too late to work with you on this?
No, that's why we're here, and I don't want to
Okay.
appear like I'm stonewalling. It's just
No.
some of these ideas, I can kind of know where they're going to head. Bringing the public to the roof is a security risk to the residents.
Not
that are-
public, it's a restaurant.
restaurant,
You can't
but
go
that's
up there unless
public.
you're eating at the restaurant.
But that's
It's not just a,
That's public. I mean, that's.
I mean, but it works in Salem, why can't it work in Beverly?
I know, well, I don't know the economics, I don't know that project.
Because it's a hotel.
Go to the restaurant. Yeah, I said, go to the hotel. We're tasking you with going to the restaurant.
I'm sure.
Buy us all a drink.
Are they open tonight?
I'm just
I know.
wondering, I just,
So I'm open to ideas, that's why
Yeah.
we're here, we're here to listen. I guess if someone said, yeah, don't use gray paneling, do white paneling.
So you're open to
Absolutely.
ideas, which
Yeah.
is wonderful. And what do you see as the next step then? To harness sort of these ideas and what do you see as a plan?
Well, we're gonna do a neighborhood meeting in early May,
Okay.
so
Where will that
probably at the Depot restaurant on the lower level, that's where we've done them before.
be? Similar, because I feel like I didn't really get to see. I'll get to
Okay,
see it
yeah.
again. Okay.
Yeah, maybe with some changes in it.
Could we see it once more? before
Would you be open, and does this group think it would be reasonable to your suggestion, Nancy, to have a small group follow up
Maybe
with
that's the
you,
way.
Chris?
That's
Maybe
kind of what I
right.
was getting to.
I'll look to you. to-
A volunteer / selected by the executive board group to come meet with
Yeah.
you.
Absolutely.
And I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, I mean, if that's something that you guys are interested in,
Sure.
we're happy to work with you guys.
Now's the time, that's why we're here.
Yeah, since you're gonna be my neighbor, I want to talk to you about this.
701, I know you.
I think if we are going to limit the contacts that we have with you, I mean, for understandable reasons, just logic, logistically, I think maybe what we'd want to do is prioritize, what the ideas are that we've heard, get a survey out to the membership, and maybe we could prioritize the things that are more and most important to us. That way, when those few individuals sit down with you, it's representative of a
Sure.
larger group. And then maybe you can tell us those answers. Is this feasible, or
Yeah.
are we just
Yeah.
wishing?
I'm open to that exchange.
As a group, the membership could take a vote to establish kind of an ad hoc committee to work with Beverly Crossing on this project. End it.
Is that something that we-
I'm a fan of voting.
I make a motion to that effect.
I don't know if you can. Are you
I'm a member.
Okay,
I'm a member.
I take it back. Sorry.
But there has to be a second for discussion.
Second.
A preference for specificity. If I might,
Always.
a friendly amendment to the motion that's
Sure.
been made. That the chair be directed to appoint an ad hoc committee of 5 members. Much more than that, it gets impossible to manage. To meet, to express the views of the membership as best the chair can collect those views
Okay.
prior to the filing of an application.
One second.
I'll accept that as a friendly then. Is there a
second.
to the friendly?
I second it.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Okay, doesn't count, but, okay.
Opposed?
Opposed? Sorry. First time we voted on anything other than the minutes. All right, so we'll work on that as a leadership group, figure out the best way to do that so that we're efficient. And we'll let everybody know what the plan is moving forward, working with Chris and Thad too.
And if you are interested in being on that committee, why don't you either send an email to the Gmail account or see Stefano?
Yep. All right. And since we're on the topic, we've been meaning to talk about increasing participation by the membership. And since we have many new faces here tonight, hopefully a lot of new members sign up, and people can get involved and contribute to the organization. And as we move forward, we'd like to groom new leadership for the organization too, so as terms roll over, we can get great people to contribute, volunteer their time. So definitely shoot us an email, reach out to us, and we're interested from hearing from you.
When does the next membership year start?
June 1st.
June 1st. So you people could, if they're not members, people could sign up today for, what is it, $10? $5? $4. So you could sign up today for $4, or you could also wait until June 1st and pay
$6.
$10. It's worth it. You get the emails.
$10. This is the best committee in the city.
Since you brought it up before, is there a survey type thing going to go out to the membership as well?
There is no survey, but we'll work on that with our new committee first was created.
The motion that's adopted allows the chair to take measures.
Yes, we can put together a survey.
I can point you to it 5 times, and then you have to do everything.
How will we know what that's a Beverly discussion, presentation?
Of the neighborhood meeting.
Oh, the neighborhood meeting? Notices go out to,
Okay, but the city sends it.
Yeah.
that's
If they send it to us, we can send it out
Yes.
to membership. So if you're not on the email list, and you didn't add it to the sign-in sheet, before we're after the meeting, add contact info. Some attention. Our next meeting is May 28th here at the library. The Beverly Bike Committee will be joining us, so we get to hear what they're working on. I know they're also interested in the Depot study area, so this part of our ward is really coming under review. So it'll be another good opportunity to work with some enthusiastic residents. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
Move that the meeting adjourn.
Second? Those in favor?
How come you're so good?